Welcome to CBC Windsor News at 6. I'm Meg Roberts. Thanks so much for spending part of your evening with us tonight. The heat is causing chaos for some who can't escape it. Matthew House in Windsor has downed several of their air conditioning units. Plus, if you're planning to go out to a Windsor City park during this heat wave, make sure you bring your own water. We tell you why. And Windsor's Jewish Film Festival has kicked off its 21st year, and it's not shying away from a dark time in the Middle East. As the heat warning continues in our region, most of the air conditioning units at a local shelter have stopped working. Just under half of the 74 residents at the Matthew House Refugee Welcome Center are affected. Now the organization that relies entirely on donations is looking for some help.
Our people are pretty good, but we have pregnant women, we have children, we have seniors, we have people from all over the world and all different ages staying with us. And certainly we have one woman who's having a little bit of a hard time breathing because of the heat. We have a 82-year-old gentleman who is struggling because of the heat. Well, some temporary and some support in longer-term measures. So some fans and some sleeve air conditioners will help, both temporary, will help people in the apartments. A repair of one of our units will get us through X number of months or years, but definitely at least one of our units needs to be replaced. And those big 10-10 units are not cheap.
Oui, c'est très difficile.
If we didn't go out, we have no choice than to stay indoors, which is hot, and outside is also hot, so it's a really painful situation, very hard situation.
Ça ajoute encore la stress. Donc.
It's adding to the stress of, getting documentation, so it's really hard. We need donation as soon as possible. We need people to come to us urgently. We are in need.
We'll bring Colette in nice and early to talk about this warm weather. Colette, I don't know what it was about today, but it felt slightly more bearable than yesterday. Or is my body just getting used to this?
Well, that's, two good points. One of the things is at times we had a little bit of a breeze, so that could help, although I know it's sort of like a warm breeze. But our bodies do need to try to adjust to this. So when we're having an event like this, and we've got the heat warning, of course, that's in place, and we're likely going to be seeing this lasting through the week. But when we have an event like this so early in the season, we really haven't adjusted so much. So Meg may be feeling better. I'm not sure if everyone else is really adjusting. The heat warning, we're likely going to keep this right through the week towards the weekend. And even when our temperatures are kind of cooling down, they're still going to be warm. They're still going to be above seasonal. So that's one thing to really be aware of. And when we get these humidex values in the 40s, you got to be really careful here too. When they're in the 30s, yeah, there is some discomfort. I mean, depending on your background. But once we get over 40, which we have seen today, by the way, I was just kind of doing a quick summary, counting reporting stations across Ontario. I counted no less than 40 communities where the humidex was 40 or above today. So we were in company, but you get into great discomfort and avoid exertion, and it can be dangerous. Heat stroke becomes a possibility in here. I know I showed these yesterday. I may show these to you almost every day because it's so important. I want everyone to stay healthy and stay hydrated. Dizziness, rapid heartbeat, headache, feeling faint. If someone around you is having some of these symptoms, then they really need to take them seriously. Our current temperatures, look at this, 33, talk about a breeze. That's why Chatham-Kent, you're at 26, Sarnia at 33, and then we jump into those humidex values and still holding over 40 at 41. And if you have underlying health conditions, then even there in the lower 40s, it actually can be certainly dangerous for you. The sustained winds, yeah, over 25 kilometers an hour. And here we are again with some of these thunderstorms bubbling up. A lot of this has moved up here towards Cottage Country and Georgian Bay. There's a special weather weather statement because of some of the heavy downpours that can come out of these because there's so much moisture available in our atmosphere. Tomorrow will start out quieter, yes, some cloud cover, and then isolated storms are going to bubble up again. Really hard to pinpoint where those exactly will be. You just need to be aware of it, and I keep those in the forecast into Thursday as well. See how we get a few more, tend to be in those afternoon and early evening hours. Overnight temperatures really hard to get relief when your overnight readings are still staying in the low to mid 20s, and humidex values even at night are around 30. So especially without the benefit of air conditioning. Tomorrow, 35, 32, 32. Yeah, as we go towards the weekend, it's actually Sunday night. I see us kind of coming back down a little bit, but still, it's going to be warm, just not so hot.
Tomorrow's going to be an uphill battle, Colette.
It is. We're peaking really kind of into tomorrow.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
If you're planning to go out to a city park during this heat wave, make sure you bring your own water. Because as the CBC's Jennifer LaGrassa reports, there's few accessible options to keep you hydrated.
Of the city's 205 parks, there are 11 functioning outdoor drinking fountains, just like this one here at Jackson Park. Now, some of the other parks could have recreational facilities or bathrooms where you could grab a drink of water, but for many others, there's no other option but to bring your own. On Windsor's Riverfront Trail, there's stretches where there isn't a fountain or a washroom. This is a more than 5-kilometer trail, and it's gone from having 5 fountains to 2. Some told me if there were more and they were more noticeable, they definitely use them.
I didn't even know there was 2, and I don't even know where they are, so that's new to me.
And you're at the mercy of bringing your own water and therefore bringing like your own backpacks, which can be a little bit cumbersome sometimes. But definitely if there was more signage and more options available, for sure it'd be helpful.
4 years ago, the city had 18 outdoor drinking fountains, but several are now out of service, and there's no plans to bring them back, says the city's Parks Department.
And unfortunately, certain ones just seem to be under constant acts of vandalism, and unfortunately, we've either had to remove them altogether or, at least for the current time, decommission them.
He says for some fountains, it would be a constant cycle of fixing it and then it being vandalized the very next day. Just like this one here at the Ford test track. There's actually parts missing from it and there's graffiti on the side. Chaco says that if people want more water fountains, they should advocate for them to council. But until then, you should head out prepared.
We always do encourage people to, plan ahead and bring, water, food, and other appropriate items with them.
Jennifer LaGrassa, CBC News, Windsor.
We've just endured our first out of several steamy nights, and it will be another long, miserable evening for people who don't have the luxury of air conditioning. Anthony Bain is a kinesiology professor at the University of Windsor. He studies how hot nights take a toll on the human body.
When we fall asleep, our bodies naturally cool down. And so if it's too hot and your body can't cool down, you kind of lose the normal physiologic function that kind of puts us to sleep. So we're unable to fall asleep.
The University of Windsor is laying off 10 people and shutting down the production arm of the School of Dramatic Arts. A spokesperson announced today the University Players Theatre Company will be closing, where 6 of those jobs are being cut. CUPE Local 1393, which represents some university staff, says the Entrepreneurship Practice and Innovation Center will also be closed. The university didn't say where the 4 other job cuts will be coming from. It's part of an effort to try to balance the base budget and save $5.6 million. The union says those affected were pretty emotional when they found out.
They weren't surprised, but they were shocked. And the amount of emotion in that room was absolutely tenable. The union is upset. They did not follow the language of our collective agreement. We're supposed to have 2 weeks before any announcement to our members that there's going to be layoffs, as there should be a 2-week period between that so we can discuss any options. There's never been any options to discuss. They're presented by the employer on how to save these jobs. It was just presented as final.
The University of Windsor did not respond to our questions about the union's claims that the collective agreement was not followed. Well, an update now to a story we brought you a few weeks ago. We told you about residents on Lake St. Clair who are concerned about a pile of rocks jutting out of the water and damaging boats. Well, Transport Canada now tells CBC News those rocks appear on navigation charts, but the CBC's Dale Molnar found otherwise.
These rocks in Lake St. Clair, just offshore in the 400 block of Russell Woods Road in Lakeshore, lie just under the surface of the water. And the residents have been trying to get them either removed or marked so people in watercraft don't hit them. However, Transport Canada recently wrote CBC News, the rocks referenced along the St. Clair shoreline are identified and charted in publicly available nautical charts published in the Department of Fisheries and Oceans Canadian Hydrographic Service. They sent this picture of the chart indicating that asterisk is the rocks. Even though that's the approximate area, Harbour Master Peter Barry says that's not the rocks.
Yeah, these are sewer markers and buoy markers. So there's the storm sewer outlet right there.
CBC News has made Transport Canada aware of that and is awaiting a response. He could not find the rocks on his chart of the lake.
Using the scale from Lakeview Marina to Pash Island in that distance, definitely the pile of rocks that are in question would be within that type of distance. So if we carry that all the way down, we don't see anything indicated on the charts that there's rocks in those shallow locations.
The Windsor Power and Sail Squadron also confirms the rocks aren't on the charts. They say, however, if you have a GPS-type navigational chart plotter like this one, the company Navionics that creates the electronic charts has the rocks on their charts.
So the Canadian government does big rocks, Navionics does little rocks, and they really need to work together. I think it's probably would be the responsibility of the Canadian Coast Guard to go and put a permanent buoy on it that wouldn't move.
Joe McHale, one of the residents who is concerned about the rocks, says a lot of boaters don't have the charts or navigational aids, and people on personal watercraft don't either. MP Eric Kuzmarchik says he is seeking information from Transport Canada.
Safety is our number one concern. That certainly is my number one concern. And
a representative from Kuzmarchik's office says they are getting back a similar response about the rocks being on the charts. CBC News is awaiting further information from Kuzmarchik. Meanwhile, the municipality of Lakeshore will be voting whether to request signage for the rocks from Transport Canada at a June 25th meeting. Dale Molnar, CBC News, Windsor.
The 21st edition of the Windsor Jewish Film Festival is happening this week at the Capitol Theatre. There's a wide range of films being shown, including some that touch on the current conflict in the Middle East.
It's not just for the Windsor Jewish community anymore, it's for the entire community. We've really been trying to expand our festival, and we just wanted to try something new. We wanted to try a new atmosphere. We think, the Capitol Theatre brings a little bit of an ambiance.
This is a film that shows, a group of parents, Palestinian and Israeli, who have suffered that tremendous loss of their own children and are determined. They're determined to see each other as human beings, not as animals, not as brutes, but as other people suffering the same way. It's a tiny, tiny spark of hope in a very dark time. Yes, it's going to be controversial, but people who would see it would come away with a positive sense of how darned complex the whole situation is. People think of Jewish films as the Holocaust trauma, and that's an important aspect of Jewish history, but that's not all. We have always succeeded in getting a variety of films, a few documentaries. We're always looking for comedies, plus a little love story. We really want to have a wide range of approaches.
For the first time in the festival's history, we will have a police presence at the Capitol Theatre throughout the entire festival. We want everyone to come. We welcome literally everyone in Windsor to come. As long as you're going to be respectful and not create a disturbance, we would love everyone in Windsor to be in attendance.
Screenings of the Windsor Jewish Film Festival continue daily until Thursday night. The Narrow Bridge you saw preview just there is the festival's closing film. That's a look at our neighbors also sweltering in this heat. We take a look at how the heat is affecting the U.S. coming up later in the show. An Ontario woman says the landlord and tenant board discriminated against her for being pregnant. She says she hasn't been given enough time to move out of her rental unit after being evicted, despite recovering from a C-section. Lane Harrison has that story.
Christina Ribeiro thought the home she rented in Milton would be a place for her children to grow. Instead, she and her family are being evicted weeks after she's recovered from a C-section. The landlord and tenant board knew she was having the operation and considered it during the decision, but she says 2 weeks after her 6-week recovery isn't enough time.
The deadline to move out is July 31st, but July 18th is the earliest I'd be able to pick up heavy things. So how am I supposed to pack? And then also with a toddler and a newborn, that adds more challenges to the mix.
She's being evicted because her landlord filed to move in their parents, a move she believes is retaliation for not agreeing to illegal rent increases. She fought the eviction, but the board ruled in their favor. LTB adjudicators can use discretion to delay an eviction based on a tenant's circumstances. Tenant lawyer Dania Majid, who is not involved in the case, says some discretion seems to have been applied here, but it may not have been enough.
Expect this family to pack up and move in 2 weeks after such significant major surgery, and then to have, a newborn, young children on top of it. I would argue, as a clinic lawyer, was not, a fair or reasonable use of that discretion.
Ribeiro says on top of her surgery, finding a similar size rental in Milton has been hard given the tight market, and she's struggling to secure daycare for her children.
The stress has been very high for everyone in the family, not just me, and then that cascades down to the children as well.
Adding to the stress is when she found out about the eviction date. She says she asked for lots of notice, but received the decision a day before the C-section.
I cannot tell you the stress that I felt and the anxiety of like, oh my gosh, I'm supposed to give birth tomorrow morning, and yet I'm being evicted.
The 3 months it took for her to receive the decision is not abnormal, but it points to how backlogged things have become at the LTB.
It used to be back in 2018 that you would only wait 7.9 days, 8 days between when you had your hearing and when you got your order. So that's an extraordinary increase in delays that parties are experiencing.
Now, Ribeiro joins the long list of people frustrated with the tribunal.
Yeah, I had full faith going into this that things were going to turn out right and that we'd be okay, but I have no faith in the system now.
She's now seeking legal advice before officially filing for a review with the board. Lane Harrison, CBC News, Toronto.
The union representing LCBO workers say they're ready to strike in a little over 2 weeks if they can't reach a deal with the corporation.
We've been meeting with the LCBO since March, and they're not listening. So something's got to give. The LCBO has refused to negotiate with us in any meaningful way. They have not engaged with any of our proposals.
The union says part-time roles make up 70% of their workforce. They're seeking more full-time jobs and wage increases. Over the weekend, 97% of workers voted in favor of strike action if necessary. If no agreement is reached, workers could begin job action at 12:01 a.m. on July 5th. The risk of extreme heat has become a serious concern ahead of the Summer Olympics. We have more on that coming up after the break. Students across the country are also feeling the extreme heat. Most are in classrooms that don't have air conditioning and lack any updated cooling and ventilation systems. Deanna Sumanak-Johnson spoke with students, parents, and administrators about how they're coping.
Grade 4 student Abigail Lafev says that on hot days it's hard to concentrate in class.
And it's usually like 27, 28, 29, sometimes even 30.
Like many schools across Canada, Abigail's doesn't have air conditioning.
There's so many kids at our school that are leaving early because they are sick. They're pale, they're complaining that they're going to throw up.
With heat waves starting as early as May and lasting well into the fall, climate change impacts are felt by Canada's students. This is not the classroom heat you may remember as a child. It's more intense and could last for months.
Heat is underappreciated as a hazard, but it's responsible for more illnesses and deaths than all other natural weather hazards. For children in schools, it reduces their ability to learn.
We emailed provincial and territorial ministries of education. Some answered our questions about how they're tackling overheated classrooms. BC Ministry of Education said that it upgraded HVAC systems in 400 schools since 2020 to the tune of $300 million. Alberta said school boards have the autonomy, accountability, and responsibility to ensure their facilities are responsive to extreme weather conditions. A similar sentiment was expressed by education ministries in several other provinces. But this Ontario School Board trustee does not buy it.
The money that the government gives us isn't enough. And in this day and age, it's unacceptable.
At her initiative, a dozen schools in Toronto Catholic School Board are piloting a project, misting stations where kids can cool off.
It's nice when the mist hits you because it's like a big relief, you know?
It's a solution, but not exactly for the problem we have. It doesn't solve the heat in the classrooms.
As parents and educators fight to make schools a safe and comfortable place to learn in a changing climate. Deanna Sumanak-Johnson, CBC News, Toronto.
The risks of extreme heat has become a serious concern ahead of the Summer Olympics. Experts say the Games in Paris could be among the hottest on record. CBC's Susan Ormiston takes a look at the concerns.
The Tokyo Olympics were the hottest ever, up to 34 degrees and 70% humidity. Paris could be as bad or worse.
I think there's a fatal risk because as an athlete you are programmed to push your body to the absolute limits, and athletes aren't going to pull back. So if we are competing in these hotter conditions, it's definitely scary.
Last summer, blistering heat in France killed 5,000 people. Last month was the hottest on record globally, and Europe is the fastest warming continent. Athletes and scientists are ringing an alarm bell. In a new report, Rings of Fire 2, Sebastian Coe, four-time Olympic medalist, says climate change should be viewed as an existential threat to sport. Heat plus humidity plus exertion can cause nausea, cramps, even heat stroke.
35 degrees. I've felt as the temperature got up, it's got steadily harder and harder.
We really need to be asking ourselves, are we pushing them too far? Are we putting them into situations that are too dangerous?
The Paris Organizing Committee has vowed these games will be the greenest ever. So no air conditioning in the athletes' village, built instead with sunshades and in-floor cooling. But heat is such a worry, some teams are considering bringing their own portable AC.
In and out of the front.
I am really bad in the heat. Canadian rower Jenny Casson says Olympic organizers should weigh climate effects significantly.
I don't think it's as simple anymore as choosing the country with the highest bid. You have to weigh in other factors, or else you're not going to have the games. You're going to have athletes who are barely alive and unable to perform at their best.
The report recommends adjusting timing or venues and less interest in oil and gas sponsors. Susan Ormiston, CBC News, Toronto.
We'll move over King Kong. The top of the Empire State Building has a new tenant. Kong's old stomping ground is now the temporary lair of an 80-meter-long dragon. It's wrapped around the building's spire as a promotion for the new season of HBO's Game of Thrones prequel, House of the Dragon. The huge beast will hang from his perch through tomorrow. Probably a safe bet there are fewer pigeons hanging around that part of Manhattan. Well, that's it for CBC Windsor News. Thanks so much for tuning in. Looking forward to seeing you back here tomorrow night.